Welcome to the first edition of the Making an Impact Thursday night, now with a little bit more melanin podcast. It's a long title. I think I need to shrink it down some. I am your host, as always, Chad Porto. Joining me is not Zachary Tyler Pew Pew Duncan. No. He is on leave for the moment. He got a work release program. Yeah, we let him leave the yard. We're going to have to go and claim him back eventually. Joining me is the colleague of colleagues, the co-host of co-hosts. He sits second chair on the Wrestling Underground podcast. He is Marcus Green. Marcus, we are here to talk about some Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, man, it's been a while since we linked up to talk straight up and down about episode of Impact. Shout out to the Zach man, doing his due diligence elsewhere. But yes, I do count for the melanated part. It's Chad laid out. I guess I would.
Well, to be clear, the melanated part was actually because I got some quick chocolate mix next to me, and I was gonna make some chocolate milk. But yeah, I guess you qualified.
I was like, whatever he is drinking, it sounds delicious.
Oh, it's greatly delicious. It's Trey Magnifique. Speaking of Trey, we're going to be talking about some Trey Miguel. So here's what we're doing. If you're listening live on twitch.tv/Wrestling Underground, we're doing two shows tonight. We're going to try to keep it to an hour, but we know us, and we've already spent, literally, Marcus and I have already spent nearly a half an hour just talking before we started recording anything. So it's going to be one of them nights. Oh, it's going to be one of them nights. So we're gonna try to do this right. We are gonna talk about making this week's episode of Impact. Then we're gonna do a review of or preview of Rebellion. That's all on tap for this week. Actually, the Rebellion preview is gonna be on Wrestling Underground. Just because that's the way I already organized the photos. So stick around for that. But yeah. So we're going to talk some Impact tonight. We will stop the stream, start the stream again to update the title of it because it doesn't always like to correspond and do good things with good title things on Twitch. So that's just what we're going to have to do. So we'll tell you when to refresh. But yeah, with that being said, Marcus, let's get started. It's been I think nearly a month since the last review of Impact we've done. We had Hardcore Justice. We didn't talk really about Hardcore Justice. I think we talked about it on last week's, or no, we didn't talk about it because we didn't do a show last week. I don't think we did. So, just general thoughts on Hardcore Justice before we get into this, because we're on the road to Rebellion. What did you think of Hardcore Justice? We don't need to go into big specifics, just general overall thoughts.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was a good show. They started it and ended it with a bang, and yeah, they've been getting really good about these special event shows. If you're not like, I feel like for the most part the company's been having to do a lot of redeeming coming off of Bound for Glory. So these shows have really done that, and I think Rebellion is going to be cool. But yeah, Hardcore Justice, I thought it was some good stuff. They definitely put the hardcore in it because obviously I think Dreamer was taking over. So yeah, it definitely. I think we did talk about. I called it a variety show because it literally had a little bit of everything: comedy, hardcore stuff, some straight up and down wrestling, and just a little bit in between, everything in between. So it was okay.
I liked it. It definitely had a lot of its moments. I was covering something else while it was on, so I had to watch it in replay. But the gentlemen from Powerbomb Jitsu got me. They got me so good. I was trying not to read spoilers because I know they like to live tweet. And then I see a tweet saying, "Man, I can't believe Scott Hall was on Hardcore Justice. Dom and whoever are going to be so mad." And I'm like, what? So obviously I went back to rewatch it, and as I'm watching I think it was like the second match of the card, all of a sudden I see a broken photo of Scott Hall, and I'm just like, you sons of bitches. I genuinely thought Scott Hall randomly showed up at Hardcore Justice. So I'm just kind of sitting there going,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
we definitely talk about it. Yeah, we definitely talked about it because I was like, what was the thing on commentary? It was like, yeah, I think Matt was like, yeah, man, I can't believe there's a freaking photo of Scott Hall in the ring, and then D'Lo was like, yeah, he's definitely gonna want royalties on it.
It's one of those moments where I was just like, of course I fell for the Twitter bait. So with that being said, let's get into this week's episode of Impact. We open up with a really fun match between Decay and the Good Brothers. We haven't, I've missed a few weeks, so I'm not entirely sure if what I'm about to say is honest or true, but it felt like it's been a while since we've seen Crazy Steve and Taurus. It might be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they was on Hardcore Justice and
Mm-hmm.
commented like, oh, Black Taurus has been a brilliant addition to the thing. We've seen an elevated form of aggression with Steve, which I think has really upped his game. And obviously Rosemary is always gonna, fit into whatever she needs to fit into. But yeah, I think this has been a really cool way to kind of revamp and bring the K back together. I just need them to pick up some more wins, pick up some momentum because I think they haven't unfortunately to have to kind of serve into the narrative with the Good Brothers going into this, their rematch for the tag straps. But to me, they could definitely knock off the Good Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
so. But this was this was a solo match, right? Or this was a
Yeah.
tag team?
No, this was a tag team match.
Okay, yeah. But to me, like I said, I think they having to serve the narrative right now with the brothers going into their match. So, but yeah, yeah. I hope they don't have them rack up a bunch of losses because I think they could really do some good stuff. Like Taurus is hella fun to watch. Like I'm sitting there feeling like he comes off like a heavyweight, but he moves like X division. So
Yeah, and unlike someone like Brian Cage who tries to do like X Division moves, Black Taurus moves in a way that's violent. Like he does a lot of like sprints and big splashes. Like he really makes you feel the impact, which is no pun intended. Which is not something that a lot of big men always do. Like you think about like what like Moose does. Like he does like a lot of like moonsaults, and I think he did the flux capacitor at one point. Like that's cool to see, dude. 6'7", 300 pounds, but it doesn't feel authentic, and those moves, generally speaking, don't really, to me anyway, have that kind of like football impact, that type of MMA slam. It looks more like a glamour move than it does an actual combat move. So for me, I like Taurus because he does a lot more violent impact stuff. So I definitely enjoy that. Unfortunately, they did lose. The Good Brothers win and cut another promo talking about Finn Juice and building up to their match at Rebellion this Sunday. I will say this. I do hope that Decay does not go the way of Reno Scum. Reno Scum has left the company. They'll probably be back
yeah,
at some point. This would literally be their third or fourth outing with the company. So I have to imagine that they're gonna be back eventually. Good dudes,
yeah,
can't speak highly about them enough.
yeah. Kind of remind me of Wade in terms of the overall narrative of them in the tag division. Kind of reminds me of what happened with the Rascals. Like they're good.
Hmm.
They had some high points, but ultimately, they I guess they never saw them fit enough to pull the trigger with them. So they ultimately ended up serving the narratives of other teams that they were going with. So, like you said, this would kind of been their third or fourth outing with the company. So, like it's on so many times you can kind of dangle that carrot. So,
I do think they'll be back eventually, though. Hopefully, the next time they're back, they actually can make some noise because I always like those guys. Speaking of guys I like, some of them are not in this next clip. We get some conversational points from Matt Cardona, yay, Trey Miguel, Shira, Gia Miller, James Storm, and they're all talking about the AEW World Title Impact World Title AEW Impact World Title match. There it is. We'll talk about our predictions on the next show coming up here in about a half an hour, so stick around for that. We then get a Violent by Design promo, Eric Young's talking about how he's going to do bad things to good people. Doesn't like James Storm, doesn't like Eddie Edwards, yada, yada, yada. For a man who allegedly has a torn ACL, Eric Young is not missing a beat. I don't know if that story is true. Of course, we got it from the interwebs. So who knows? But yeah, he's still wrestling. He still intends to wrestle. So, here we are. Marcus, general thoughts on Violent by Design as a group? Because I haven't asked you about how you feel about them as a foursome. More specifically, how do you feel about Eric Young in the leadership role, and how do you feel about the name?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Obviously, this is coming out of, his overall narrative since he's been back in the company, and he talked about Joe Doran being a great addition when he first, popped up with him, and then he kind of just branched out, and we've seen the turn of Jake, not cousin Jake, but Cody Deaner,
Mm-hmm.
um, into that way. And then obviously bringing in Rhino, who was kind of just in flux, really. And then also, I think you told me that Slater was kind of injured, so he was kind of middling, doing nothing. And I think it only fits that you would have a little charging man, a Rhino man, in a group that's geared towards specific only violence. So kind of really just makes sense. I was kind of in the middle on it at first, but I'm coming more around to it. Also, they're racking up wins. But I think with somebody that's committed to his characters as EY is, I think he definitely makes it work. And I think the people around him are feeding off the energy. And I don't think not that Joe Doran needs it because he looks like he's knocked people's heads off. But yeah, I'm digging. I think it's definitely working, and they're definitely establishing themselves as the big bad right now in the company. Besides Callahan with all his randomness, so
I feel like Joe Doring has made statues run away afraid. He looks mean. Like, he might be the nicest, sweetest, gentlest person in the world, but he's always snarling. I get it, Joe. Me too. Me too. We then get a Susan V. Tennille Dashwood match. It's whatever. Susan's one of those characters that kind of works when she needs to work. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the 5 tools of a wrestler. For me, it's athleticism. It's knowing how to work in the ring, work rate. It's being marketable, your look. It's being charismatic and being a good talker. Now, for a lot of people, the last 2, being charismatic and being a good talker, may seem almost indicative of one another, but I don't think that's true. And Susan, to me, is the reason why I separate the 2, because I am so bored listening to her promos that I often think to myself, I wonder if I can find a game from the 2017 Cleveland Browns to rewatch. For those that don't get the reference, that's the year they went 0-16. So I'd rather watch them get destroyed again than listen to another Susan promo. But as Su Yung, she has an inherent magnetism that captivates you. So I do believe there's a difference between mic working abilities and charisma.
no, that's absolutely a great point, man, and it's kind of coincides with some sentiments I've had when we were talking about stuff with WWE. I feel that exact same way about Ricochet as Prince Puma and Lucha Underground.
Yeah, he had great charisma, but he was a terrible talker.
Yeah, and because of what he wasn't able to do in terms of because he had to do a lot without saying anything, it brought an aura to him that he doesn't have when he talks.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he's like one of those guys. He's also one of those guys that, and this hurts some people too. They don't sound how they look.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, all we got to do is go back to Suburban Commando. You're a dead man, Ramsey. Well, so that's why you guys don't talk. Kind of on the inverse scale, like two notable examples of guys I think are good talkers but aren't charismatic are Lance Storm and Bret Hart. They can deliver a
Mm.
good, quick 90-second promo talking about how they're going to beat you up or how they're better than you. But, like, you don't really go, yeah, no, I'd like to have a conversation with Lance Storm at a dinner party. I think he's very charismatic. No. 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 No, thank you. Lance would probably just talk about the snow. Yeah, so it snowed about 8 feet in Calgary this week. Yeah, it's insane. Snow. Oh, wow, Lance. You got me. Hell of a conversation. Anyway, Tennille gets the win. They're building up to Tennille versus Deanna Purrazzo at Rebellion. And I'm kind of just sitting here thinking to myself, when did Tennille Dashwood become the face in this feud? I don't know. Although Caleb did a nice little shout out to Eddie Edwards on Twitter, basically saying, I got hired 4 years ago in Impact, basically because you made me look good. And I'm just like, yes. And apparently, little news, I don't know how true it is, but apparently Alicia Edwards said that she and Eddie have signed a new 1-year deal with Impact. So
Nice. That's good. I always love to hear that. We root for Lish around here.
yes, we do.
But yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, that shows a humble. I always like that, man, because you can't, forget where you've been, and it's always good to, remember who helped bring you to the dance in the first place. So, stuff like that tells me a lot about these guys. Even though, obviously, like I said, we only know them from the characters they bring out. But yeah, you gotta tip the hat to the people that open the door for you to walk through.
We have some late breaking news that I think is going to make everyone happy, but you're going to need to stick around or listen to the Wrestling Underground podcast to find out what it is, because it doesn't pertain to Impact. So, moving on. Apparently, Brian Myers and Matt Cardone have been in a decades-long rivalry. Am I the first one to know this? Because I don't remember this at all.
Wait, what?
Yeah, apparently Brian Myers is saying that he can see clearly now that his friend is gone, and that he is ready to conclude their decade-long rivalry. So, news to me. That's like Shawn Michaels saying, "Man, I can't wait to have that match with The Rock." Wait, what? When? Yeah. So, some stuff just doesn't make sense, Marcus. Some stuff just doesn't make sense. Speaking of things that don't make sense, Neva recently was let go from the company, which I completely expected to happen, basically because she was hired because her husband was hired. Her husband was Jake Christ, or is Jake Christ, Man in Black. So we go from Neva to her former friend Havoc. Havoc is still in the company, and that makes me sad. She says that she sees Rich Swann winning the main event on Sunday. Rohit and the Good Brothers, however, believe Kenny Omega will be the new face that runs Impact. It doesn't have the same impact, no pun intended, as the face that runs the place, so I don't know why you would say it, but hey, there you go. I really don't see Rich Swann winning Sunday, but we'll get there. We then get a Trey Miguel and Sami Callihan segment. Sammy basically says they're going to do bad things to each other. Marcus, last man standing, Callahan, Miguel. How you feeling about the matchup? Did I lose you, Marcus?
Okay, I'm back. Was that last part?
Yeah, it's had to ask. Yeah, had to ask. How do you feel about the Trey Miguel, Sami Callihan last man standing matchup? Did you like the build up to the feud so far?
Yeah, I'm digging. Like I said, we already know, Callahan can carry multiple things when it comes to feuds like this. But it's been really cool, seeing this kind of pseudo evolution with Trey Miguel, which he's needed, because that was a very awkward situation coming out of that Rascals thing.
Mm-hmm.
They had a sense they were supposed to elevate together through NXT, and that did not happen. He was the odd man out. and he ended up having to come back, and that had to. They couldn't bring him back and not acknowledge him. I mean, they could have, but that just would have been dumb. So to have him now having this last man standing match and everything that's going on with the guy that initially called him out when he first came back in the first place, I think it's been some really good stuff. Hopefully this can again build Miguel up to gearing towards main event status, or at least put him back on track to go out and finally win the X division or something like that. But yeah, I think this is necessary for that character because he has to stand out. Now there's no other alternative because the Rascals are definitely not coming back.
No, they found some success in NXT, which is still struggling to find 1 million viewers on Tuesday nights. Good luck.
Yeah. But but it's also a good situation in terms of building him up because Callahan is so well rooted in the thing now, so established in terms of what he can do. He doesn't suffer from taking an L
No,
here.
no, not at all. So I am looking forward to it. Callahan's a star maker at this point, so we'll see what happens. I enjoyed the Shera Jake something match. I know Shera doesn't have a lot of fans because he's kind of a slower, not as athletic dude. He doesn't have the nimbleness or the quick footwork to really stand out. I think he's getting much better. I think I remember watching him in Ring Ka King to kind of give you an idea how long I've been watching Shera. That was a decade ago. So I've really been impressed with his improvement. I like that they're bringing back Shera with Rohit, and a match with Jake something. Even though I know Jake something needs wins on his own because he's a big deal, or if you're a pickle fan, he's a big dill. So having him eat a loss isn't always great, but I'm fine with it because both guys need to have that upward momentum. What do you think of the Shera Jake something match?
I dig it. Two big bulls, two houses, if you will, going at it. I like to see a series between these two because I
Mm-hmm.
think uh, Jake could definitely pull out a win. But Rohit is the ace up Shearer's sleeve, even though he doesn't need it. And they're good pairing because, like you said, we finally got a serious, legit Shearer, um, and Rohit is excellent mouthpiece. So I think it's a 1-2 punch type of combo. It's just seeing what they do with it because you would hate for this to turn into a scenario a la Austin and what's his face, because he was supposed to be the next big kind of horse freak, and now he's just kind of the bodyguard. So
Yeah, with Sawyer Fulton. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely hope that doesn't happen to either of these guys. Let's see, where are we? I had to refresh. We then get a promo with Trey Miguel's Wrestling School, and everyone's rooting for him. Yeah. Hell of a segment. We then get Ace Austin, TJP, and Josh Alexander, and their little rivalry heading up into Rebellion. We'll talk more about them on the other side of the show. We also get Rich Swann cutting a promo talking about Kenny Omega being disrespectful. Kenny Omega and Don Callis interrupt going, yeah, we pretty damn disrespectful. And then Moose is like, hey, remember me? And everyone's like, hey, it's Moose. Moose is like, don't lose. And Swann's like, I won't. And then Moose is all like, all right, good. And then Swann's like, do you bleed? You will. I wish he said that. That would have been awesome. This was probably the longest non-match on the night. It's to sell the show, but I think at this point we already know whether or not we're going to watch the show or not. So I don't know if it did exactly what we thought it would do or could do. Marcus, are you over the moon excited for Swann v Omega?
definitely intrigued. I hope they let them go. I hope it's not overbooked to hell. But I definitely don't want them to lose. So I'm very much looking forward to it. But yeah, I think the Moose stuff was great, specifically for me because one, I didn't expect it. Two, they actually kept him out like a couple of weeks. It feels like,
Mm-hmm.
or at least a week. Continuing to tell that story. They've been really consistent. Besides the EC3 hiccup, Whatever the freak that was, they've been real consistent about Moose's build and his character motivations and whatnot. He's not been wishy washy about what he's wanted. So it's been real cool to see that he just came out there like, look, man, he was a better man um, that night for an extended period of time. But make no mistake about it, it was my mistake that you capitalized on. You weren't better than me. It was my mistake. Won't happen again. Um, don't underestimate Omega, and your ass better not lose them titles. You're gonna have far more problems on your hands than becoming champ again. So thought it was some good stuff and continues that whole thing. Like I said, cause Moose, it was like that Apollo thing. Like you beat me by 3 seconds. That's very hard of a man of my caliber to deal with.
Mm-hmm. See,
You got to rock the Creed thing. So
yeah, I was going to say like you mentioned Apollo, and I was thinking about that Apollo Creed, especially at the start of the second film, where they're like, you won. He goes, he it sure doesn't feel that way.
yeah, cause he was like, the manager was like, why you want it with this dude? He's like, why don't you want me to want it with this dude? Like, dude, look, you gave him every bit of hell that you could, and the bastard just kept coming. This ain't, we don't want this fight. He's like, look, man, I won, but I didn't beat him. So that's basically what that remind me of.
That's how I responded after every fight in high school. You won, but you didn't beat me. As I'm spitting out teeth, I think my pancreas came out of my ass. But you didn't beat me.
Jazz like the Cleveland Steven Ross. I could do this all day, you cunt.
See, I think I've actually said that to someone. Like not the I can do this all day. It was a football drill, and we were doing I forget what it was called. I think they're like called Texas Smash'ems or something like that. You lay down head to head, like with your heads touching, and you're both on your back. They blow the whistle, and you both get up on your feet and try to tackle the other person. I remember they put me against like the biggest fucking dude on the team, and I'm like fucking 5'6" and like 190 pounds. Like, all right, no, you guys are assholes. That's fine. And like I went like 9 times against the dude, and they're like, "You done?" I'm like, too stupid to be done. Let's do this again. It was a rough day. It was a rough day for Chad. He had a rough day that day. We get a bunch of Impact stars rooting for Rich Swann in the upcoming match. Then we get another Taylor Wilde promo. Let's get wild. I loved Taylor Wilde when she was in Impact. I hated that she left. I hated that she didn't just leave. She left wrestling. She's a firefighter. And when she was announced her comeback, I was like, oh god, that'd be awesome if she would come back to Impact, because this was probably end of 2019, and then the Rona came. And that put a kibosh to everything. And now that she's like back in the fold, back with Impact, I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And I think she's still pretty young. I think she's only like 34. She was beating up Kong back in the day. Taylor Wilde is 35. So I'm super excited about this. I think she came back from the Mae Young Classic like 2 or 3 years ago, whenever that was. But she's been pretty quiet since then, so I'm looking forward to it. Marcus, do you remember Taylor Wilde, and are you excited? For a reminder, she beat Awesome Kong, but she was also the first ever Impact Knockouts champion with Sarah Stock.
Yeah, I do remember her. Just remember she didn't really stand out too much to me when she was there, and maybe that's because she was, maybe on her way out towards that time. But it feels like she definitely kind of looking to make her mark now. I don't know if she's looking to have like a jazz type of run, but I'm looking forward to it. This, like you said, they've been having a great influx of legends, specifically with somebody like Parazzo heading the division. So I think this is just kind of be another thing towards that.
Jazz has retired officially. I think she had a hell of a last couple of years in the business with NWA and Impact specifically. She will be missed. I think for a while, though, I don't know if I would say she's looking for a Jazz type run, because I think Jazz was here just to do a send off. Like, she was here to do some matches, kind of, maybe build up a potential Hall of Fame bid, if you will. And I think she did it. I think she did more than enough to be honored by Impact for her, wrestling credits all around. not necessarily just for what she did in the company. But I think for Taylor Wilde, this might be more of a full-on comeback, as so much as a retirement run with what we got from Jazz. I'm hoping it's a comeback. I love Taylor Wilde. She was super athletic, crazy fun. Her tag team with Sarita was arguably the best thing about 2009 TNA at the time. So I'm or 2008, I think. So I'm like super into this, and I'm looking forward to it, man. I love Taylor Wilde. So my only hope is they bring back cheerleader Melissa, aka Alicia Flash, because they had some pretty good matches back then. That would be pretty baller. I think Sarah Stock got let go by the WB. I don't know if she's interested in returning to the ring. She's 41 or 42, but I'd like to see them, either tag back up or have a match. Like, that'd be fun as hell. So the Impact is bringing back their stars of yesteryear, and I love it. Sabin, Storm, Taylor Wilde, hell yeah. But I'm waiting for Matt Bentley and Tracy Brooks next. Like that's all I want. Give me some of that Bentley bounce.
Yeah, hilarious. Yeah, man, we had some good throwback TNA vault videos, man. It'd be cool to see if maybe Tara wouldn't mind coming back. I mean, obviously she had a very big divide between her and the particular regime she left under. But I think now this will be, because she feel like she's always got maybe a couple more matches in her or whatnot. And she looks like she's always stays in great shape. So the great thing is you don't know who will pop up, but the also great thing is like the company's now in a space where people actually again want to come back to the place. So
So Sportskeeda did an interview with her. At least I think they did. They're the ones who posted the transcript. On leaving Impact, she said, I had started actually performing wrestling shows at 18. At this point, when she retired, she was 25. I had been on the road full-time since I was 18. Being so young, that's kind of a long career. And being 25, I got to the point where I was starting to worry about my future because I was starting to feel physically beat up. I hadn't finished my university degree. I had no real work experience. My resume says, 8 years you've been a pro wrestler. But if I were to break my neck, I'd have nothing to take to an employer because I can yell at the camera really well and I can do a flip. On her decision, Wilde further revealed that her departure from Impact Wrestling resulted from a change in management at the time and created a team's lack of interest in the Knockouts division. Uh-oh, brother. She says, I had an excellent storyline going with TNA, but then management was changing at the time and their focus was no longer the Knockouts, and I don't think I was at the top of their list. That's when they were starting to bring back more models, in which was fine because I was starting to get burnt out of wrestling and I was ready to make a normal life for myself, for lack of a better term. So apparently Hogan and Bischoff kind of ruined things. Fucking go figure. I'm shocked. Shocked, Marcus. Shocked. Not really. Kind of. Not really. But shocked. Speaking of Hogan, Kira Hogan took on Jordan Grace in a match that went about 20 seconds. Jordan beat the hell out of her. Tosh Steele jumped in, and then all of a sudden Rachel Ellering was like, hey, what up? I'm the surprise Jazz was hinting at, and I'm here. And I was like, Rachel Ellering is pretty cool. And now they got a tag team title match at Rebellion. Thoughts?
yeah, you gotta love it. It's funny because I was tuning back in before because I watched it on Twitch. So I turned it on there. I'm like, wait, hold up. Who was that? Wait. I was like, damn, Kylie Ray got thick. and then I was like, Rachel Ellering. Okay, all right, yeah, this could be team. Yeah, this could be basically team thick right here. This is good stuff. I don't think I've seen her though since the classic. So this was really cool, man. So I was like, they could actually redeem themselves in a way for actually getting a, you know, coming off of one legacy title and going to a better one. So, you know.
Here's hoping. I've been a big Rachel Ellering fan for a while. I'm really hoping we get like the Thick Warriors or the Thickness of Doom, and then they put on their face paint, and then Paul Ellering comes out to manage them, and they're in like studded bras. Like that'd be hilarious as shit.
That'd be so good because we already got. I mean, yeah, that would be great because I think it's funny how we was talking about the whole thing about because she called herself Big Mama Pump, and then now ironically enough, Petey's doing the Steiner Math promo. Uh, but yeah, it's. I mean, it's interesting going into the match because this feels like her third or fourth shot at these tag titles. Eventually, they're going to have to kind of piss to get off the pot. But like for me, it's like you got such a gem of a thing with fire and flavors. Like, do you cut that off so soon? So
I think you can make the title change without cutting off fire and flavor. I think too often we think about what happens in wrestling from a WWE perspective, and in WWE, if you lose the belts, you lose your spot. You're no longer featured on TV. You're lucky to be wrestling on whatever fourth-tier, quarterly. I don't know what the term for a fourth listed thing. I know it's tertiary for 3, secondary for 2. But I don't even. You wouldn't even make that list in WWE. Like you would be on the pre-show to the pre-show to the pre-show. But that's not always how wrestling works. Like for the sake of argument, look at the Ring of Honor. The Briscoe brothers just main evented this past week's episode of Ring of Honor television against each other. They haven't been tag team champions in God knows how long. So I don't think Fire and Flavor would necessarily lose their spot as much as they would just lose the belts. And I don't think that would be a bad thing. But as long as they're still being used properly, I think ultimately that's all that really matters. But that's just
yeah,
my opinion. It's a pretty good opinion, though. So anyway, main event. Eric Young. Well, we get a promo from Finn Juice. I love Finn Juice. They didn't say anything worth repeating, so we're just gonna move on. Eric Young defeated Eddie Edwards in the main event. Everyone comes out to brawl. On Sunday, it's going to be Willie Mack, Chris Sabin, James Storm versus Cody Deaner, Rhino, Big Joe Doring, and Eric Young. And Eddie Edwards is going to be on the other side with Willie Mack and such. Solid main event. Nothing to write home about. It's built up the big pay-per-view. So that's a thing. Marcus, any final thoughts on this week's episode of Impact?
yeah, man, it was fine. It was good. Like I said, I had some catching up to do, and coming off of last week's show, um, in that press conference, that was a very interesting. And I thought really good executed press conference. So this week, just building towards that momentum. Looking forward to what's coming up with obviously Rebellion. But yeah, I thought it was a solid show.
We will be before we leave. Davey Richards come back to wrestling, former Impact star. Here's hoping he comes back to Impact because again, that would be dope as shit. I've always been a big Davey fan, so now that Ethan Page is gone, because Ethan Page literally said he would quit if Davey Richards ever came back. So was I calling him Davey Boy? I
Yeah,
think
I
I was
was like,
calling him
what?
Davey Boy. So yeah, Davey Richards, he's coming back to wrestling. Hopefully, he comes back to Impact. Ethan Page said that he would leave wrestling, or not leave wrestling. He'd leave Impact if Davey Richards re-signed with the company. So now that Ethan's gone, I feel like you can re-sign Davey and be like, oh well, fuck off. You already left. So here's hoping. I'd like to see him more. But we got more show to come. We'll be back here in about 30 seconds after we hop over to the next side of things. The Wrestling Underground's coming up next with the same two hosts, me and Marcus. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at NERDCORP, on Instagram at Real Nerd Corp. The website's realnerdcorp.com, RealNerdCorp.com. Marcus is on Twitter at ParadoxKid, ParadoxKid.
That is me.
You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, on Twitter by searching True Penny Show, TruePennyShow. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, ChadNerdcorp, and on the Instagram at Chad What. I am uploading more on Instagram. You can see some photography if you want to do that. Otherwise, we'll see you guys soon for another edition of Making an Impact next Thursday with me and Marcus after Impact ends. Stick around for Wrestling Underground.